From the governor's office in the state capitol, Governor Pay Quinn holds a press conference explaining why he signed into law a bill that abolishes the death penalty in Illinois. This runs about 30 minutes.
Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. Today, in this room, under the watchful eye of President Abraham Lincoln, by a constitutional majority of the members elected to the Illinois General Assembly, and by my actions as governor, we have abolished the death penalty in Illinois, the land of Lincoln. This was the most difficult decision that I've made as governor. It was made after many days and nights of reflection and review. For those who support this decision, I received many communications, and from those who oppose this decision, I received many communications. And I studied everything to the best of my ability and followed my conscience, and I made this decision today to sign the law passed by the members of the General Assembly. It became law today with my signature. We've also commuted the sentences of 15 members of death row who were convicted and sentenced to death. I believe if we abolish the death penalty in Illinois, we should abolish it for everyone. Our state is joined with 15 other states and the District of Columbia in abolishing the death penalty. I'll answer any questions that you have. Life in prison without possibility of parole or release.
When you campaigned in the fall as a supporter of the death penalty, you didn't talk about repealing the death penalty at that time. Do you feel you were upfront with voters about this issue?
The members of the General Assembly acted after November 2nd, the election, by constitutional majorities of the House and Senate on a bill. It's my responsibility, both under the Constitution, my ethical responsibility, to look at every bill, study it to the best of my ability. I heard both proponents and opponents of this legislation. I felt at this time, in this place, in this moment of history, the best step forward for the state of Illinois was to abolish the death penalty. We all know that our state has had serious problems with respect to the system of the death penalty for many years. 20 individuals have been sentenced to death and later exonerated and removed from death row. And under those circumstances, I felt it was important to study every aspect of the death penalty system. And I have concluded, after looking at all the information that I have received, that it is impossible to create a perfect system, one that is free of all mistakes, free of all discrimination with respect to race or economic circumstance or geography. To have a consistent, perfect death penalty system, I have concluded, after looking at everything I've been given, that that's impossible in our state. I think it's the right and just thing to abolish the death penalty and punish those who commit heinous crimes, evil people, with life in prison without parole or any chance of release.
Governor, what has been done in terms of what you just said? I mean, we're going to toughen the remaining laws?
Under the statute I just signed, there is a death penalty abolition trust fund that's established by law that will provide resources to those who are the family members of victims of murder, as well as to those in law enforcement to prevent murder from happening. I think this is a very important trust fund, and I want to say to the family members of those who have been murdered, there are no words in the English language or any language to relieve your pain, and I understand that. I've met with family members who strongly support the death penalty and other family members of victims who strongly oppose the death penalty. And I listened with all my heart to each and every one of those families, and I want to tell them that it's impossible, I'm sure, to ever be healed, but we want to tell all of those family members, that the family of Illinois, all 13 million people who live in our state, we want to be with you. You're not alone in your grief. I think it's important that all of us reach out through this trust fund in helping family members recover.
Why did you bring members of the death row group that you communicate, speaking to family victims?
No.
Why did you not choose to do that?
From those who are on death row today?
Correct.
I looked at the circumstances. I felt once the decision was made to sign the law abolishing the death penalty, that it should be abolished for all.
Governor Ryan started this process of the moratorium and the commutation. Governor Blagojevich continued it by not putting anyone to death. How much credit do your predecessors have in this?
I think there are many people, both in public life and outside of public life, everyday citizens who have worked in this area and have strong feelings about it. I think they were indispensable at showing that the 20 men who were exonerated and removed from death row were put there by mistake. And I think that's important for our system of justice to understand, and especially here in Illinois, where we are the land of Lincoln. I think Abraham Lincoln, who was sworn in as president almost exactly 150 years ago this day, if he was in my shoes, I believe Abraham Lincoln would have signed the legislation that I signed and acted as I did today. I think this is a decision that is in the best interests of our state and our people, and all of those, both elected officials and citizens who worked on this issue. I think they deserve great credit for doing things within our democracy.
Governor, you said this is your toughest decision. Can you walk us through? I mean, I'm thinking of some of your people who would have wished that you would not have abolished it might say he never really made a strong effort. He was going to always abolish it anyway. Can you walk us through why was this your toughest decision, and to what extent did you waver on saying, no, I'll allow the death penalty to go forward?
I looked at volumes of material and letters and emails. We've had many, many meetings with family members of victims, with prosecutors and law enforcement personnel, with citizens at large, with those who have worked in the area of death penalty reform. And I think it was very valuable as governor to hear from everyone. I read a lot from law reviews. The daughter of a former governor who dealt with this issue gave me this book, and I did read it. With respect to Cardinal Bernardine, who I revered and had a chance to meet in life, I read A Gift of Peace, which is, I think, a very good book for all to read. It was very helpful in reflecting on this issue. Cardinal Bernardine felt, as I do, that there are other means of punishing violent, evil people who commit heinous crimes other than the state terminating their life. We need to have punishment for those who commit those crimes that is never ending, and I feel that we do have that with life in prison without parole or release. I did read the Bible, and I think that it's important for all of us to reflect on those good words in both the Old and New Testament, and I arrived at a decision that I felt was according to my conscience, and I have no regrets.
Are our current laws adequate in terms of what's in place now, life without possibility of parole? Is there really such a thing, do you think?
I believe that anyone who is sentenced to that sentence should serve it and not be given any opportunity ever to be free. They committed a heinous crime that they should be punished for. I know that those family members who have lost a loved one dear to them, and I've attended many funerals in the last 8 years, I know how sad those terrible days can be. It's important to understand, I think, that those who perpetrate crime must be punished, but the punishment of life without parole in a prison, a maximum security prison, I think is the only alternative we have when we really come to the realization that in our state of Illinois, we have tried over and over again to come up with a system that makes no mistakes with respect to carrying out the death penalty. And we have found over and over again mistakes have been made, and innocent people have been freed. And I think we have to come to the realization that it is not possible to create a perfect, mistake-free death penalty system. And upon that realization, we should abolish that penalty of death and instead seek other ways of punishing those who do evil.
Governor, have any mistakes been made in the death penalty system since the reforms and new safeguards were adopted?
I think there's grave concern with respect to the fact that we have 102 counties in Illinois with 102 state's attorneys. The consistency is not something that those who seek the death penalty have exhibited, in my judgment, that there are differences based on race, on gender, on geography, on economic circumstance. That isn't what our system of justice is. It has to be one that's blind to all those considerations. I don't think the Illinois death penalty system in any way can be described as being blind to those matters. And under those circumstances, we have to do what's right. My job as governor is to take an oath of office and follow the Constitution and do the best I can with the matters that come before me, and I think I've done that.
One of the mothers that I spoke with whose daughter was murdered by someone on death row said that she had tried calling your office 5 times and was desperate to speak with you before you made your decision. And you obviously have tried to reach out and get opinions from so many people. I'd like to learn more about why you chose not to speak with family members of those on death row.
Well, I spoke family members. You asked. Yeah, right. I think I have listened to many people from both sides of this issue. It's probably impossible for me to talk to everyone, but I certainly, I think, talk to a representative number of every single one of those who have an interest in this issue, and that's the best you can do. Over the last 2 months, I deliberately set up a time of reflection and review, study, and I think that is sufficient to come to my decision.
Governor, you talked about consistency issues, concerns about bias, etc. Don't those concerns apply to the entire justice system, not just death penalty cases? And are you saying our justice system has inherent unfairness in it?
Well, I think that when you adopt a constitution, as we Americans did, we the people, we always understand that we want to create a more perfect union. We don't say we have a perfect union. We want to create a more perfect union. So we have to always strive to do better. And in all parts of the justice system, I happen to be a lawyer, you're an officer of the court, and you have a duty as someone who is taking an oath of office as a lawyer as well to improve our justice system. I think I have done that today.
What setting in private, Governor, is supposed to have some kind of a ceremony or observance?
I had the sponsors of the legislation here today, and they are the ones who led the debate and discussion on the issue in both the House and Senate. And I thought that was the appropriate way to sign this particular bill. We're having a public gathering right now. The bill is law, and I think that is something that we, the people of Illinois, will tell the whole world.
Governor, you were aware of these sorts of problems of fairness and mistaken convictions before you ran for a full term. Why didn't you say then that you had these concerns and thought that the death penalty should be abolished?
Well, I supported the moratorium on the death penalty. I thought that was the appropriate way to go. And when the General Assembly, the members by constitutional majority of both houses acted on January, I think, 11th of this year, it became my duty to, I think, completely review their actions, which are obviously recent, and to look at the entire issue from top to bottom and to apply my conscience to reviewing that, and I did that, and I'm very grateful to the people of Illinois, both those who favor what I did today and those who oppose it, for participating in the opportunity to discuss the matter.
If the legislature reenacts death penalty in limited circumstances such as DNA or for cop killers, would you support that type of measure?
No.
Governor, was there a point in the last few months, a specific case that kind of let you down into that?
No, there's no specific case. I did appoint an anti-violence commission last year, about in the summertime, and each member of the anti-violence commission has lost a loved one to murder. And I did meet with those men and women and parents, spouses. That was an emotional day, and I listened to them. Not all were in favor of the death penalty, and not all were opposed. And they spoke from the heart. I appreciate everyone in Illinois doing that. And I know there are family members today of those who have been murdered who do still support the death penalty. And I would say to them that I understand your pain. I know there is no way to erase the pain. I do believe that the death penalty should be abolished in our state because of the mistakes that have been made, applying it in the past, and also because there are other means of punishing those who do evil. And I do also believe that it's our duty as citizens of our great state to help our neighbors and console our neighbors, and to have a death penalty abolition trust fund that helps the victims of family members of victims of murder, and also works with law enforcement to prevent murder. I think we need to do that to our utmost. And the funds that have been applied over the past decade to the Capital Litigation Trust Fund, and that's millions of dollars, under this legislation that will now be applied to a different fund with a different purpose.
I think people point to John Wayne Gacy as an example of someone...
Let's have somebody else here.
What finally made you come to this decision, and when did you actually decide?
Well, I made my final decision over the weekend, and I thought it was important for our state, for history, as well as for an important piece of legislation like this, to have a opportunity for all to register their opinion, whether it be by mail or email or calling up or visiting. So I heard from both sides. I think I got a pretty good idea of where people's points of view were, and ultimately I had to make that decision of which way to go. So I did it over the weekend.
Governor, people point to John Wayne Gacy. I think it's probably the worst of the worst, perhaps, that have been executed in Illinois. I mean, as you look back on that case and in the context of what you've done today, do you think that that was a mistake that the state did in executing him?
Well, I think John Wayne Gacy was an evil man who committed heinous crimes. Having said that, you cannot have a death penalty system in our state that kills innocent people. And unfortunately, that system was in grave danger of doing exactly that in 20 different instances in Illinois. And so what's really at question here, it seems to me, is the system itself. If the system can't be guaranteed 100% error-free, then we shouldn't have the system. It cannot stand. It just is not right in our democracy and system of justice to have a death penalty system that would apply and execute to innocent men and women. And so that really, I think, is a decisive matter that has to be dealt with by all of us.
Governor, deep down, you always believed the death penalty was wrong, and you were kind of taking that position to become more electable over the years?
No, I think all of us learn as we go through life, and I certainly learned in the past 2 months from a variety of people from Illinois and outside of Illinois who have opinions on this issue. I really read as much as I could, and I took notes. Most of you know I know how to scribble down notes, and I keep meticulous notes, and then I review my notes, and I do that on everything that applies to this job. So I really feel that I gave it my best review and follow my conscience. And if you do that, I think God wants you to do it that way, and your conscience will never kick you in the shins.
Your voters often say that life in prison is worse than a death sentence. Do you agree with that?
I think we should have stern, unrelenting unremitting punishment for those who commit violent crimes like murder and heinous crimes. They should never be allowed to go free, or never should be allowed to leave prison. I think they should be put in maximum security prisons and left to reflect on their wrong for the rest of their lives.
We spoke with Randy Scotto today, and he says that Missouri and Indiana should follow in the steps of Illinois. What would you say to the governors of Missouri and Indiana?
Well, we had our debate here in Illinois. Our state has had a particular history with this issue of the death penalty. It's internationally known. I think we had our debate. The members of the General Assembly, both houses, handled this issue, I think, with solemnity, and they understood how important the issue is. It's an emotional one, obviously. So I think the way we handled the issue in Illinois is a good example for others, but that's up to them.
Is there a reason you didn't hold this event in Western?
I thought it was appropriate to be here, and I always thought it was appropriate to be here. This is the state capitol. I like the painting of Abraham Lincoln. He looks over my shoulder every day I'm here. I believe in Abraham Lincoln on how he treated democracy. He believed in mercy as well. And I thought this was the only place to have it.
During your reflection on this subject, was there any particular case or fact that really just swayed your decision?
Well, clearly the history, the difficult history that Illinois has had applying the death penalty raises the fundamental question, the overriding question, of whether or not you can, any human beings, can create a perfect system that is error-free, that would never execute an innocent person. I mean, if you read the Bible, if you save one life, you save the whole world. And if we are in any way participants as a state in killing an innocent person using the power of the state, we have to deal with that as a very important issue. And I totally understand how the family members of victims feel about the loss of their loved ones due to the heinous crimes of violent people who are evildoers. I do believe the evildoers should be punished severely in prison, without parole, without ever seeing freedom again, but also without the death penalty.
Governor, what kind of faith do you have in our prison system?
Well, like everything, there's room for improvement, and we'll work on that.
Governor, you talked a little bit about the fairness issue, the way the justice system treats people of different races and economic classes. Can you elaborate on how much of your decision is based on that versus the possibility of just mistakenly executing an innocent person?
Well, there's been rigorous studies about that, and I think it's important that we have a justice system that's colorblind, that does treat people of limited economic circumstances differently than those who are well off. I think where you live, whether you live, what area you live in, should not determine how justice is applied. These are all issues that matter, and I think all of us are concerned about that.
How would you be assigning this legislation if it was just a question of those elements versus the possibility of executing?
I think when you look at any legislation, you try and study every aspect of the matter, and that's what I did. I heard from people. I heard, there are good friends of mine, State's Attorney of Cook County, who was an advocate of the death penalty, was a person of great faith, and brought to my attention the members of families who have lost their loved ones due to violent crime and murder. And I was very grateful for that. I understand how painful it is. And as I said at the outset, there are no words in any language to relieve that pain. And I know that there'll be some, and many, perhaps many, who don't agree with what I did today, but I think it was the right thing to do for our state.
How much credit does your old rival, George Ryan, deserve for getting this ball rolling? Did you take any input or receive any input from him in making your decision?
No input. I didn't have any communication with him. I certainly give him credit for recognizing the shortcomings of the Illinois death penalty system. I think any person would, with good faith, would see that it was broken, seriously broken, and we have to address that in its entirety.
Who was going to sign this?
Significance of signing the bill today?
I thought it would be the appropriate place, Springfield, Illinois, our state capital, the governor's office, to sign it here. Usually the middle of the week is the time that is, the busiest time. Our legislators were here, the sponsors, so I thought it was a good place. We had the sponsors of the legislation, and I asked Sheila Simon, Lieutenant Governor, to come as well. Her father, as you know, was involved in this issue for many years, so he was a good friend of mine, and I thought Paul Simon would be very proud of what we have done today in his state of Illinois.
So this legislation, Lieutenant Governor?
Yeah, it was right over there.
Because of the question about George Ryan, what's the difference between what he did those years ago and what you did today?
Well, he acted pursuant to his conscience, I believe, and with respect to this issue, and I'm acting according to my conscience. I think a key consideration that all should be aware of is the elected representatives of the people after November 2nd election, in their wisdom, took a vote in the House and then in the Senate on this issue and presented this bill to me. And I think that given that circumstance of the elected representatives of all the people of Illinois taking this step, it was incumbent upon me to study this issue and reflect on it and listen to the proponents and opponents, which I did, and I've acted. And I think I acted in the best interest of our state, and that's how I feel.
Elected after November 2nd, I thought it was during the late job session.
Well, the election was in November, but the General Assembly met in January, and they took the vote they took. So.
Is there one argument that you found particularly compelling that would have allowed you to say, no, I'm not going to abolish the death penalty? What was the strongest argument in your mind on the other side? On the side of keeping the death penalty?
Well, I've acted today. I acted to abolish the death penalty in Illinois. I have no regrets. I think this was the right thing to do for our state, given circumstances of the state of Illinois on this issue. So I feel that I did what I should do.
There's already legislation in play that would reinstate the death penalty if this happens under maybe some slightly different terms. Are you completely ruling out any consideration of that?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you automatically commute any sentences if I can get
What happens to anybody who's sentenced to death between now and the law's effect?
Following the governor's press conference, we get reaction from Lieutenant Governor Sheila Simon. Lieutenant Governor Sheila Simon, thanks for joining us on what is an historic day with this abolition of the death penalty in the state of Illinois. Just what are your thoughts on this day?
I'm very pleased to be here to witness this going on, to be in the room with legislators and a governor who showed, I think, uncommon courage in pursuing this kind of justice in the state.
Did you share your thoughts with the governor on what the decision should be?
Yes, I did. The governor and I had a discussion about this, and particularly I told him about my experiences as a prosecutor and how that helped to shape my opinion. And he asked me to get that down to him in writing, and I did. And I don't know that played any significant role at all. I'm just happy to be here today.
Could you share with us what are some of the arguments that you made to him?
Yeah, the one most significant argument from my perspective as a prosecutor is that we try criminal cases to a standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond all doubt. There's room for doubt even after a conviction in our system, and we cannot be in a position of executing people where we have room for doubt.
All right, well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. All right.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.